Bonjour, mesdames and messieurs and les enfants. Welcome to a Sunday afternoon. Yes, we are all live together again. It's English in your ear. Oh, enough of that. Oh, enough of everything. I am feeling so tired today. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Did I start too quickly? Did I interrupt your concentration? Okay, I'm sorry. Let's try again, shall we? Oh, hello everyone. I am feeling a little tired today. I don't know why. Maybe it's the jet lag. Yes, that's what it must be. I think it must be all the jet lag. Because yesterday we returned from our lovely trip to Paris. And, well, that flight is such a long flight. It is 55 minutes, the flight. So you can imagine that today I am suffering from a terrible case of jet lag. Hi everybody, this is Mr. Duncan in England. Oh, thank you. Merci. Merci beaucoup. Hi everybody, this is Mr. Duncan in England. How are you today? Are you okay? I hope so. Are you je suis fantastique? I really, really hope so. Here we go then. It's Sunday. It's a fun day. I've almost lost my voice, by the way, from all the shouting that I've been doing this week. Also, my nose is very blocked up for reasons I will go into later. And I am feeling a little upset. Because yesterday something terrible happened. And I will talk about it later on, but I am feeling a little distraught today. I have a little bit of post-traumatic stress going on today, so please excuse me if I seem a little odd. Also, I'm late as well. I've noticed I'm late by 10 minutes, for which I apologise. I went to bed last night really early. I thought I will go to bed early and I will wake up the next day feeling very, very lively, very full of the joie de vivre, as they say. But no, I woke up this morning feeling really tired, and I still feel tired now. I think it must be all the walking that I've done over the week, because we have been in Paris. Did you see my live streams? We did a live stream from the Eiffel Tower, and also we did a live stream. Well, I did it on my own. I was waiting for Mr. Steve to arrive, but he didn't. He didn't come back. He was away doing something very important. So I stood on a Paris street corner. I still can't believe I've done this, but I did it. I actually did it on Thursday. I stood for 3 hours on a Paris road, a boulevard, a rue, depending on how you want to describe it. But I was standing there and I was talking for 3 hours, breathing in some of that lovely Paris pollution. And I think it's had a very strange effect on my voice, because now my voice feels very strange. My throat is rather sore, I must admit. But also I've been doing a lot of talking this week, meeting lots of lovely people in Paris. Would you like to have a look first of all at some general shots? Here we go. So here is a little taster, just a short taste of the things I saw this week in Paris. Yes, you might notice a slight French theme today with the live stream. So we were in Paris last week. Now, we're not going to bore you with all the pictures, so don't worry. It isn't all about French this week, because we have you as well on the live chat. No, of course we can't forget the live chat, can we? No, definitely not. By the way, do you like my French hat? We call this a beret. Beret. I did see a few people around Paris wearing berets. Not many, but I thought I would wear a beret today. And Mr. Steve has one as well. Where is Mr. Steve? He will be with us in around about 20 minutes' time. And also later we will take a look at Mr. Steve ordering some coffee on the street corner. I'm not joking. I have some exclusive footage of Mr. Steve using his French skills. All of that coming up later on. Also today we're talking about words that we use in English that originate in French, or even French words that we do use in their original form here in England and in English. So that coming up later on. Mr. Steve talking about lots of things, including the chaotic traffic on the roads. Wow, you should see the traffic on the roads in Paris. Pretty amazing. Here is a little taste of the traffic situation. So this is taken nearby the Arc de Triomphe, a very famous landmark in Paris. But Mr. Steve was completely blown away by how chaotic and sometimes crazy the French traffic seems to be. So all of that coming up later on. We'll be talking about that with Mr. Steve. As you know, Mr. Steve loves traffic. He loves talking about cars. He likes driving cars. So we'll be talking about that a little bit later on. I am feeling slightly hoarse today, which reminds me, I didn't see any horses in Paris. I don't know why I'm mentioning that, but there are two things I didn't see in Paris. I didn't see any horses, and I didn't see any dogs. I didn't see one dog in Paris. I was there for nearly 5 days, and I didn't see one dog. Is there any reason why? Does anyone know why I didn't see any dogs during my time in Paris? Here we go then. Let's have a look at the live chat, shall we? I don't know why I didn't see any dogs. I have no idea. Let's have a look at the live chat, shall we? Who is on the live chat? Wow, so many people are here already. But the big question is, who is first? Oh, hello to Khyber. Well done, Khyber. You are first on the live chat. Well done to you. And of course, as usual, that deserves a round of applause. Les applause for you. Yes, I hope you enjoyed that. Also, we have Blue Thunder here today, and Bella. Hello, Bella. Alamgir, Chris Guadalupe is here as well. Lolly Lolly. Oh, bonjour, Lolly Lolly. Also Martha in Poland. Lee Yu is here. Massimo. Hello, Massimo. It's nice to see you here. I don't think I've seen you for a long time on the live stream, so it's great to see you here today. Belarusia. Hello, Belarusia. Can I send once again my best wishes to your mother and to you as well? Sari is here. Also, we have Maria. Hello, Maria. Beatrice. Oz. Hello, Oz. It's Oz Clark. Where are you watching at the moment? Tomek says, welcome back to the UK. How was it? How was my trip? Well, it was a beautiful week in Paris. Well, 5 days, I suppose. But 5 days... Let me tell you now, if you are planning on going to Paris, you need more than 5 days. 5 days isn't long enough. Or maybe you need to keep going back again and again to do different things in Paris. I'm having difficulty speaking English today. I think it's because I've been listening to French all week. Wafei or Wafei says hello to you. Also Alamgir. Hello to Alamgir. Nice to see you here on the live chat. Hasna is here. Hello, Hasna. Also Lucas and Galina. Also Anna Rita, Olga, Plotina. Hello, Plotina. I like your name, by the way. Lena is here as well. A big hello to Lena, Palmyra, and also Alamgir. Wow, already there are a lot of people on the live chat. Your song is very happy, Mr. Duncan. Thank you very much for that. Yes, I like to be happy. Sometimes it's not easy, but being happy is pretty nice. Lolly asks, did you see any yellow vests? Because there are protests taking place in Paris. Fortunately, I didn't see any protests taking place because they only happen at the weekend. So no, I didn't see any protests during my time in Paris. But I did see a lot of lovely people. One of the things I did notice as well is I didn't see anyone arguing or fighting or suffering from too much alcohol, which is strange because alcohol is drunk quite a lot in France in general. And I'm going to be honest with you now, I did drink quite a lot of French wine. And can I tell you something? There is nothing like French wine. Only buy French wine. Even if it's a little expensive, it was absolutely delicious. And normally I don't like drinking wine. So normally I don't like wine at all. But I did have quite a lot of it. And we had some lovely food as well. We can't talk about Paris without mentioning the food because it was absolutely gorgeous. We were very lucky. We were quite lucky because we went along with Mr. Steve's company and they took us to lots of lovely restaurants, lovely cafes, some very exclusive places to eat food. So we felt very lucky and everything was free. So we didn't pay for any of the trip, which was quite nice, really. So thanks once again to Mr. Steve's company. I won't mention them, but I will say thank you very much for allowing me to go with Steve for free and spend 5 days in Paris. It was amazing. I was quite blown away by it. You look like army. Oh, I see. I look like maybe I'm in the army. Could you imagine me in the army? Oh dear. Could you imagine me with a large weapon in my hand? Palmyra says, I am fine here, but the weather is like your country. Very hot. Oh, I think that might be a message for Alamgir. Hello to you. Oh, Jeff is here. Hello, Jeff. Yes, I think I am suffering from old age today because I have been running around Paris. On our first day in Paris, we actually walked all the way to the Eiffel Tower. It was nearly 6 miles. So we did walk quite a long way on our first day. And my feet were very sore. David Enrico says, hello, Mr. Duncan. How are you? This is David or David from London. And I'm happy to be here again with you on your live lesson. You are welcome, no problem. Wow, so many people here today. Thanks a lot for your company. Hello, Mr. Duncan. Beautiful clothes. You are the best teacher in the world of English. Thank you. Children play. Isn't that nice? Thanks a lot. I do appreciate your kind comments. Lots of buildings and lots of people, says Chris. Oh, hello, Louis. Louis Mendez, who is watching in France. Hello to Louis. And yes, you did spot one of the famous landmarks, the Pompidou Museum. It is a very unusual building because it looks as if all the things that should be on the inside of the building, like the pipes and the frame and all of the metal, is actually on the outside of the building. It is a sort of work of art, but also a building at the same time. So yes, we had a meal on the top floor of the Pompidou Centre. So yes, the Pompidou Museum, we enjoyed a lovely meal there as well, courtesy of Mr. Steve's company. Kituma, hello to you. Also Louis, yes, Louis again. We will be taking a look at 1 or 2 sites. Also, we will be taking a river cruise as well. We're going on the river later on as well. We're going to sail up the Seine. which is a famous river in the centre of Paris. Hello, Mr. Duncan. I'm glad you and Mr. Steve are back. Yes, we're back from Paris and we had a super duper time, even though I must admit I was a little tired this morning. I feel as if I've walked many, many miles. Thank you, Saturino. Your hat, your beret gives you an appearance of a painter or maybe a famous artist. Thank you very much for that. I must admit I quite like my beret. I might wear this every week. You look good with the hat. Thank you, Cadney. That's very kind of you. We've got one or two people also joining the live chat. I want to try and say hello to everyone, because sometimes I am accused of not talking to people or saying hello on the live chat. So I will try it. Hello, Jimmy from the Golden Notebook. I love your hat, Mr. Duncan. Is there a name for this hat? Yes, it is called a beret. Beret. So beret is a type of French hat, and you do see French people wearing them. So whilst we were in Paris, we did see quite a few people wearing berets, looking very French. We will talk about French fashion a little bit later on. Saturino says the traffic is fluid in Paris. That means it moves constantly. It almost never comes to a stop or to a halt. Have you ever driven in big cities in Italy or the USA? There is no chaotic traffic, but only jams, and you get stuck in the jams. Well, I must admit I found the roads quite easy to get across. There are lots of traffic lights and crossings for people to get across. But I did think that the roads themselves, especially with the cars, seemed quite chaotic. So that is something we will talk about later on, because I know Steve likes to talk about the traffic all the time. All the best from Turkey, Davut. Hello, Davut. Nice to see you here. Next time you should come to Italy. Maybe. Who knows? Well, in 2 months' time, 2 months from now, we are actually going on another trip. And so there will be another mystery trip taking place in about 2 months' time. So we will be doing this all over again with another mystery trip. But where will it be? You will have to wait 2 months to find out. Izegbi Yassine says, hello, Mr. Duncan. I am from Morocco. Thank you very much for everything you do for us. I am very proud of you because I still learn from you. So thank you. You are welcome. That's why I'm here, to help you with your English. Kishore Kumar is here as well. Manoj says hello from India. And Gulbeniz is here as well. Would you like to have another quick look at something in Paris? Would you? Would you really? Yes? Maybe? Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe you don't. Let's have a look at something else. Oh, here's something interesting. Mr. Steve and myself, we decided to be very adventurous, and we went on the Paris Underground. Now, the Paris Underground is very similar to the Tube or the London Underground, which of course is in London. But in Paris, they call it the Metro. So let's have a quick look at some of the sights on the Paris Metro. So there you can see. Don't stand too close to the edge because you will fall off. So there you can see the Paris Metro. We will take another look at this later on, don't worry if you miss it. And you can see one of the large trains approaching. What I like about these trains is you have 2 levels. So you have downstairs and you have upstairs. So this is one of the main train stations. So this actually isn't the metro. This is actually one of the large train stations. So many of these trains will go all over France. But we did also use the metro as well. You can see lots of people getting off and many people getting on. So this is one of the long distance trains. And you can see each carriage can hold many people. And off it goes. Everybody wave to the train as it goes off into the distance. So I'm now waiting for someone to say, Mr. Duncan, that isn't the metro. Those trains are too big to go down the metro. These are the normal trains. So these trains are the normal ones. But look at the size of them. They're huge. And you have an upstairs and also you have a downstairs as well. So I like that. I think that's quite nice actually, even though I say so myself. Let's have a look at the live chat because I'm sure a lot of people want to say hello. Do. Oh, hello also to Mohammed Gad. Hello to you. And also thank you for your kind greeting. Stanku says, please, Mr. Duncan, can you visit Poland? Well, who knows? The world is a small place now, thanks to aeroplanes. You can fly anywhere. You can travel to most places. Even sometimes you can go under the sea. So if you are traveling from England to France, you can fly. You can also take the boat. And you can drive under the English Channel. You can also drive under the English Channel, or you can sit on a train and let the train take the strain using the Channel Tunnel. But we decided to fly. That's what we decided to do. Okay, let's have a look outside. We haven't looked outside today. I've just realised. Shall we have a look outside? Would you like to? So there is the view outside. You can see straight away that everything is looking very green today. Look how green it all looks. It really looks as if summer has arrived. All the leaves are looking green. The pigeons are getting very excited because now many of them are mating. Also, you can see some lovely lilac. On the left-hand side of the screen, you can see some lovely purple flowers. So there is a lot going on outside today. Also, there is quite a lot going on here in the studio. Now, Mr. Steve will be here soon, but will Mr. Steve be wearing his beret? Will he? I don't know. I'm not quite sure. Maybe he will be. So Mr. Steve will be here in a few moments' time. But the big question must be, what colour will Mr. Steve be today? Will he be brown? Will he be white? Will he be green? Or maybe he will be red, white and blue. I don't know where Steve is going. Where are you going, Steve?
Oh, I don't think it was...
We are... Well, that was interesting. I was literally about to introduce Steve and he walked off. So that was interesting. Thank you, Steve. Here he is. But the big question is, what colour will he be? I don't know. I can already see Mr. Steve on the preview. And that looks amazing. Why does the beret look so big on Mr. Steve's head? I don't know why. And what's all that stuff hanging down? Oh, that's nice. Very good. I think that's okay, Steve. Are you ready, Steve? Come on, Steve. Okay, Mr. Steve is on his way. Steve was complaining. He was saying, my camera's too low. It's too low. I can't be seen. Here he comes then. It's Mr. Steve.
Hello. Monsieur Duncan. We are back from Paris, France, and what a fantastic time we had. And Mr. Duncan's got a red beret, and I've got a slightly darker red beret. I don't know if I'm wearing it in the right way. I don't know whether it should be sort of, over to one side a little bit. Maybe it should be, I don't know, over my ears. But anyway, I know I look amazing, and that's all that matters.
I think it suits me more.
Oh, I don't think so. I think I can carry it off,
Yes.
Mr. Duncan. Carry it off. It means I can look good in it, get away with it.
Yes, it suits you.
Suits me.
Well, see, this is what you're supposed to do, Steve. What you do is you have one side of the beret flat, and then the other one will droop down.
Like that, more like that.
That's it, yes. And now you look like a French artist.
I will paint your picture. Come on, Monsieur Duncan. I don't think that's the right accent.
No. Steve, please never do that accent again.
I can do lots of accents. I can speak English in what sounds like it's like a foreign person speaking English. I like to do it. It makes me laugh. It's probably highly offensive.
Yes. I think there's a pretty good chance it's offensive, especially if you're doing it. So here we go. We had a super week in Paris, didn't we? 5 days in Paris. We didn't see anything that really upset us. I was just mentioning this. During our time in Paris, I didn't see a single dog.
That is true.
It is.
And I didn't see a cat either.
No, I didn't see any animals that seemed to be running around as strays.
You saw a rat yesterday.
I did see a rat. That was near the Place de Concorde. That was a little bit worrying.
Running in and out of a drain.
Well,
it was about the size of a cat.
It was worrying because we were on our way to eat something. So we were looking for a lovely French restaurant, and then on the way we saw this giant rat.
I didn't see it, you did, but then there's rats everywhere. In any city, wherever there's a drainage system, there's rats. You just happened to see it. It was getting dark, so perhaps it was, I think the rats tend to come out more when it's dark, don't they?
Yes.
So they can't be seen.
I think you can actually go on tours. I'm sure there is a tour of the Paris sewers. Am I right there? I do vaguely, I vaguely some years ago remember someone saying that there is actually a tour. You can actually go on a tour of the Paris sewers.
Well, I mean, if you're going to Paris, that's not the first thing you think of going to visit. Arc de Triomphe, Eiffel Tower, the Louvre, and the sewers. Doesn't usually come in the list, but perhaps people are getting bored with the traditional sites and they want to go underground.
Well, this was a few years ago, so I don't know. Maybe they've stopped it now.
Anyway, French men in Paris, there is a certain look to French men in Paris.
Okay.
A very distinctive look. They don't wear berets. And in fact, I asked a French woman who was on our guided tour, do French men ever wear berets? And she laughed at me and said, no, that is only for the tourists. So
don't do the accent.
They don't wear the berets, but what French men love to wear is scarves.
Yes.
Knitted scarves all the time, inside the restaurant, outside in the street, anywhere.
Yes.
They like to wear a knitted scarf.
Well, quite often at night as well, when the temperature drops, you will see a lot of Parisian men wearing very long scarves, and they're wrapped all around their neck, and they come up very high, and they look very sophisticated. So there is a lot of French fashion around. We did see some very sophisticated looking people who looked like they had stepped out of Vogue magazine.
Well, to us, of course, it was quite warm in France, and we went on this river cruise in the evening, and Duncan just wore a short sleeve shirt. And before we went, the people were saying to us, oh, you'll be freezing cold, put a coat on. They all had coats on, the French people. And to us, it was very hot. And they said, oh, you English, you're used to the cold. And it's not that far away, is it really, Paris? But nevertheless, it is significantly warmer there most of the year. And we're used to the cold, and you were warm all night, even on this river cruise.
Yes, we're going to take a look at that soon, by the way. We are going to take a look at some excerpts from our lovely river cruise along the Seine. Also, Paris is well known for being the city of romance. We did see quite a few people, quite a few young couples sitting around, and they were having a little kiss and a little cuddle. So I think when you get to Paris, what happens is you find it very hard not to be romantic. And we saw people kissing. There was a lot of kissing taking place between local people as well, because when you greet a French person, what is the first thing you do, Steve?
Well, nobody kissed me when I was there. I'm wondering whether normally you kiss one side and then the other, isn't it?
Well, yes.
You kiss on one side and then the other, but there wasn't very much of that going on. Nobody kissed me ever like that.
No.
Any French person I met never kissed me.
I don't think anyone wants to kiss you on the cheeks.
So I was a little disappointed about that. I was expecting everywhere I go to be kissed on both cheeks, but I'm wondering whether French people actually do that as much as they used to. Perhaps they don't anymore. Perhaps it's only when world leaders meet or when you're very close friends with somebody. I don't think you do it just to strangers.
No.
In fact, there was an Italian lady on our trip.
Okay.
And she was very Italian. It was wonderful to meet people from all over the world, as we did on our trip. And she did do the double kiss to me, but that was the only person that did.
Yes.
Ciao, she said to me, and kissed me on both cheeks.
That's it. But then that's because you have some connection, and that's because you work for the same company. So maybe a person you have an association with, or maybe something in common with, or of course it can be used as a form of bonding as well. So if you want to quickly bond with someone, greeting them with a little kiss on both cheeks can seal a friendship or some sort of relationship, even if it's just, I don't know, in work.
Well, I wanted to say to anyone attractive that I met, you got to, in England we kiss on both cheeks and then we snog on the mouth.
Okay.
So and then woo. But nobody took me up on the offer.
Oh, I don't know what sort of holidays you normally go on.
Well, this one was totally unromantic, wasn't it, Mr. Duncan? We were so busy the whole time. We were on a schedule or a schedule.
Yes.
Depending on whether you want to be English or American.
We had a bit of an itinerary to follow.
We had an itinerary to follow, so it was quite regimented. So we had to be breakfast between 7:30 and 8, catch a coach at 9, and then it was everywhere was scheduled, so there wasn't very much time, very much free time.
Yes.
Although we did have a lot of free time on Friday.
Yes.
Because we elected not to go on one of the trips.
That's it. But they offered the most amazing trip, which I don't know. Whenever you think of Paris or France, there is one thing that I always think of, and that's Disney. No, it isn't. Disney is not French culture. So they did offer a trip to Disneyland for free, but Mr. Steve and I, we both turned it down. We said no, thank you.
No.
Sorry?
We said no.
Okay. Yes. I'm not sure what that was. Oh, you mean no?
Yes.
Oh, Steve is saying no in French. At least I think so anyway. So we didn't go to Disneyland. Instead, we took a lovely walk. We went all the way to the Louvre. Shall we have a little look at the Louvre? Because it's a beautiful place.
Louvre.
So, yes, I want to say Louvre.
Louvre.
So here it is. A little look around the Louvre. We can talk at the same time, Steve.
You don't like that?
Sorry?
Are we talking while we're showing this?
Yes, that's what I just said.
Oh, I see. Right. Fine.
I can tell that Steve's been away from the UK because he seems to have forgotten English.
It was one thing that struck me about Paris is the magnificent buildings.
Yes.
That have lots of space around them, so you can appreciate them properly.
Yes.
Buildings quite often in London, they're magnificent buildings, but you can't see them properly because they're surrounded by skyscrapers.
Okay. So this is the Louvre, and this is where some of the most expensive and priceless works of art are stored. And the building is huge, isn't it, Steve?
It's absolutely massive. And I just couldn't get over the structure of the building, how long it must have taken to build it.
Yes. And the other interesting thing is, if you take a look there, you can see the big glass pyramid. Now, I always thought they were constructed in the 60s, but they weren't constructed until the late 1980s. So I was quite surprised by that. I always thought these were around for many, many years, but it wasn't until I think it was 1988 or 89 that they were actually constructed and opened. But quite amazing. And, of course, a very iconic, that's a great word, an iconic landmark, as there are many in Paris.
Exactly. It was. I remember at the time when it opened, it was very controversial because, and in fact, the first time I saw it probably about 10, 15 years ago, I'm not sure if I like it. I'm not sure if I like the pyramids. They look, compared to the exquisite stone of the Louvre and how expensive the building looks, these look very cheap. I'm sure they're not, but I'm sure they could have thought of something a little that I know the idea was modern architecture with the pyramids and the way it's constructed is quite intricate and it's quite a feat of engineering, I think, the structure itself. And then you have the old style of the Louvre surrounding the pyramids, but the pyramids to me don't fit in. They're too jarring to my eyes. It doesn't. They look too modern.
Yes.
To be in that setting.
That's it.
To me, that's how I look at it.
That's it. I suppose art is subjective.
Yes. I don't know what they were trying to achieve, but I just don't like. I mean, one maybe, but there's about 3 other smaller ones as well, and that they needn't have had those. I think they should have built it out of stone. I think if they could have built the 4 supports to the pyramid in stone, and then had the glass, that would have fitted in better. But it's the black supports that don't look right. There's something. It looks like it's built on the cheap. I'm sure it isn't, but it looks like it is.
Yes.
That's the impression to me.
Well, the whole thing is it serves more than one purpose because it allows light. It allows light to flood into the museum underneath because there is an underground part of the museum. So those glass pyramids actually serve a purpose. So they provide light to the area that is under the ground. Also, if you stand directly behind the large pyramid, everything lines up perfectly.
All the way up, doesn't it? All the way up the Champs-Élysées.
Yes, all the way up the Champs-Élysées and all the way to the main monuments that are in the centre of Paris. If you stand very carefully and look very closely, you can see that everything lines up. I think that's amazing.
Yes, the Louvre and the pyramids line up with the Place de la Concorde obelisk.
Yes.
And then all the way up the Champs-Élysées, all the way to the Arc de Triomphe.
Yes, it's amazing.
It all lines up. It's very well done in that way. But I think if they could have made the supports of the glass for the pyramid in the same coloured stone as the Louvre was made in, that would have looked better, I think.
Okay.
It's the fact that it's all sort of, the glass looks fine. I can see what they were doing there, but the supports for the glass are just basically sort of black painted metal. and it, they could have made it blend it in a bit better. I would have thought, but anyway, that's my opinion.
Thank you to Mr. Steve, the art critic, Mr. Steve. You remember Robert Hughes? Robert Hughes was a person many years ago who used to talk about architecture and things like that. So I think maybe Mr. Steve is the new Robert Hughes.
Yes. Lolly agrees with me.
Yeah, wait there. Shall we have a look at the live chat?
I've got it here, Mr. Duncan. Abdullah Mohammed says, "Hello everyone, I've just joined. Can you tell me what's going on?" Well, this is an English lesson. That's what's going on.
So you don't actually know what's going on. So there is a description, there is a title, there is everything that tells you what this is. So I hope you will understand from this point on that this is an English stream. Live English. It is English in your ear, in fact.
Many people are agreeing with me on the pyramids. So there you go. So quite a few people are agreeing. It just jars. It just doesn't look right to me. They look like they were built on a budget. But I know it's a very expensive structure, and what you see on the surface, there's a lot more underneath. There's a spiral staircase going down, and it's very clever, but on the surface it doesn't look right to me.
Yes.
If it had been, if it had looked like a pyramid, a proper stone Egyptian pyramid, then you could have say yes, that's a solid structure, and it seems because the Louvre itself, the building looks so solid. The brickwork is so solid. The roof looks amazing in those black tiles on the roof, yes. And the chimneys, these gigantic chimneys that poke through the roof, it's just an amazing architectural feat. And you think of the number of chimneys and fireplaces they would have needed to heat that building before we got central heating. The massive structures that are there to have all the flues for the fireplaces. I just found it quite fascinating. And in fact, all the buildings in Paris, which they've retained, and that's one wonderful thing about Paris, that they have kept skyscrapers out of a large part of the centre, the whole of the centre of Paris. You have to go a mile or two out of the town centre, the city centre, before you come across a skyscraper.
Yes, it's very interesting. You have the ancient Paris, and then you have the modern Paris on the other side, where I think this has only been happening over the past 10 years, where lots of new high-rise skyscrapers, headquarters for big businesses are all building very tall skyscrapers on the other side of Paris. So there is a definite divide between what I would call old Paris and new Paris.
And yes, I think somebody has asked here, Tomek says, did anything blow you away in Paris?
The wind.
Yes, I think what I admire is that the way that they have kept the city, they haven't modernised the city to the extent that it ruins the architecture that's already there. I think the Arc de Triomphe is probably the thing that blew me away the most. It's a magnificent structure. It's the largest arch in the world. The Eiffel Tower is very impressive, of course. But that could be recreated today if you wanted to. But I don't think anyone would build anything on the scale of the Arc de Triomphe today. It would be far too expensive to do, like most buildings from several hundred years ago that were basically built on the fact that England and France, we're talking about France, were colonising the world and making huge amounts of money around the world, and were able to fund the building of these giant huge stone structures which we just couldn't afford to build anymore. I mean, if the Notre Dame had completely collapsed, if all the towers had collapsed and everything, it couldn't have been rebuilt, because the cost would be just astronomical in today's standards.
Yes.
But back then they had just huge amounts of money to spend on these structures. But we couldn't do it today.
Also, they had time. Don't forget Notre Dame took 200 years. Now, think about that for a moment. It took 200 years to build Notre Dame Cathedral, to complete it. And we went on a river cruise, didn't we, Steve?
We did.
And we actually saw, very briefly, we saw Notre Dame Cathedral, and it looked very sad, especially later when we were taking a meal at the Pompidou Centre, and we looked across and you could see many of the landmarks were all lit, beautifully lit, but sadly Notre Dame sat there in a strange dark shadow, looking very sad. It wasn't lit, it just stood there looking very, very forlorn in the dark. So I thought that was a very sad moment. Would you like to go on a river trip?
I would.
Well, guess what? We are now going to take a little sail up the River Seine. Some snapshots, some little video clips of our time in Paris. And you may have noticed there, you saw the Eiffel Tower twinkling away in the distance, and that is a special thing that happens at night in Paris at the top of the hour. So at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock and midnight, the Eiffel Tower will start flashing with lovely sparkly lights, and that lasts for 5 minutes. So for 5 minutes at the top of each hour, the Eiffel Tower starts sparkling away. It's Live English with Mr. Duncan, and also it's Mr. Steve as well. There he is.
Patrick says that the obelisk in Place de la Concorde was a gift from Egypt, which I didn't know, so thank you for that information. I was reading about the Place de la Concorde. Apparently in the French Revolution, a lot of people were executed in the Place de la Concorde. Well, we didn't see any blood, but I'm sure, when I was walking through there, I was trying to imagine all these people being guillotined. Which must have been. It just showed there's so much history in all these places like Paris, London, all these big cities around the world where there's been a lot of history has happened. Yes, and somebody, hello, happy birthday to Connell's father.
Oh,
By the way, Connell says, can we say happy birthday? And I hope that you are learning English along with your daughter. Is Connell a girl or a boy? I don't know. I can't remember, but I think a girl.
okay, that's nice. So a big happy birthday to Connell's dad.
Yes. Lewis says that there are many arguments about the skyscrapers in Paris and in the suburbs because they haven't got much personality. We did notice that they tried wherever they could to have that same sort of sandstone colour to the front of buildings,
yes,
wherever they put them up.
Yes.
But it was less successful on some buildings than in others. But yes, we went all the way to the top of the Arc de Triomphe. We queued up, we got our tickets, and what we didn't realise, we thought there was a lift that would take you to the top, but we had to walk up this little spiral staircase all the way to the top, and Mr. Duncan was exhausted. There were seats at the top, and there were people sitting there all getting their breath back.
I did like the fact that at the top of the steps in the Arc de Triomphe there is actually lots and lots of seats for people to collapse into, and I was one of those people collapsing into the seat, to be honest. I wasn't expecting so many steps. I was trying to find the video, you see, because there is a video clip of me actually going up the steps.
Yes.
I hope I can find it. We are going to have a look in a minute, by the way. It's Steve showing off his skills. His amazing skills when it comes to speaking French and ordering things. So that coming a little bit later on. I'm just going to see if I can find the clip of us walking. Those steps were amazing, weren't they? They
were unexpected. I didn't know quite what I thought. I saw a lift, but I think it was out of order, or I think you can only use the lift if you've got a disablement, if you're disabled to some degree. But everybody else has to walk up these spiral steps, which are made of metal. I wouldn't like to walk on them if it was on a wet day. I would think they would be quite slippery. But we had a magnificent view of the whole of Paris when we got to the top. And my favourite area of Paris is Montmartre. Montmartre. I don't know if I'm saying that correct, with the wonderful Sacré-Cœur at the top. And didn't realise it. We knew it was on a hill because we had to walk up some steep steps to get to the Sacré-Cœur. But it really is on a hill on its own. It used to be a village. Well, it's still a village, I think. Well, no, it was a village, then it became part of France. And we went on this guided tour, didn't we, Mr. Duncan?
Yes.
And there was this, normally on a guided tour, you have to stay very close to the tour guide so that you can hear what they're saying.
Yes.
But we were issued with earphones,
yes,
and little transmitters, and she was walking anywhere, and we could hear everything she said.
That's it. The transmitters would help.
It was very good, so we didn't have to be very close to her.
No.
And she was holding up this orange umbrella.
That's it, yeah.
So we could see where she was at all times.
Huh?
She was very, very helpful. But that's, I think, what we both enjoyed that the most, didn't we, at Montmartre, where we sat there, we saw all the artists, and we had a nice cup of coffee in a cafe, and we just sat there and watched the world go by. It was wonderful.
Yes, I'm going to show you. I can't believe you just raced onto the next monument, and we were still talking about.
I was giving you time to talk about to get your video. I thought you couldn't find your video.
Yes, but you talked about another complete subject. So here it is. Here are the steps inside the Arc de Triomphe. There they are. So those are actually the steps inside. You might not be able to see them very clearly, but they go down, all the way down to the bottom. So they're looking down from the top of the stairs all the way down to the bottom. And that is the staircase inside the Arc de Triomphe. Not many people realise that you can actually go up steps inside. And I thought there was a lift, maybe an elevator, but there was one, but that was for disabled people. And unfortunately, we are not disabled. Well,
not physically anyway.
Maybe Steve could get away with it.
Oh, right. We've got to get to Mexico if we want to be kissed a lot.
Oh.
By the way. Guadalupe says when you come to Mexico, you will be kissed on both cheeks. You shake your hand, and especially old women will kiss you a lot.
Oh, okay.
Hug you, and that is normal.
Yes. I'm used to having old people kiss me.
I'm all for that, so we're off to Mexico. That's it. Which country gives you the most hugs and kisses when you go to visit them? And we should go and visit these countries in order of the ones that do that the most.
Yes. I think maybe Italy. I'm going to say Italy. I think Italy and France, they are probably the countries where you are most likely to get kissed on the cheeks and maybe also on your face if you are lucky.
Valentin says, have we visited the Latin Quarter? We didn't in Paris. They didn't tell us where the Latin Quarter was. They told us where the Chinese Quarter was, where Chinatown was. But it was quite far out of the city. Whereas in, for example, Birmingham, the Chinese Quarter or the Chinatown area was right in the centre.
Yes.
Whereas with Paris, it was quite far out.
Yes.
So we didn't get to visit there.
I think Paris is about 4 times, maybe 5 times the size of Birmingham as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is, but it's not as big as London, so it's much easier to get around. You can get around in a day, can't you? Quite easily, you can get around to most places, and we use the underground system, which was much easier to use than in England.
But the problem is, once you visit one place, you have to spend a long time there. For example, going to see all the works of art, you couldn't see all the works of art in one morning. You would have to spend a day just looking at the works of art because there are so many things to look at from a point of view of art. And that's nothing else. That's not even visiting anywhere else. That's not looking at the shops or all of the other monuments. You can spend, as I said earlier, you can spend maybe 2 or 3 weeks in Paris and still not see everything.
There are so many. There's like 100 museums or more. And as we discovered, we went on a short tour, but when you go on a short tour of all the main sites, tourist sites, you don't get to know any of them in any detail. And we decided to go back and visit the Arc de Triomphe, for example. And we spent 2 or 3 hours just at the Arc de Triomphe. And we didn't learn everything about it, anywhere near anything about it, but we picked up a lot more information than we would have done just driving, just driving by and just standing there and looking at it. And that was amazing, wasn't it, Mr. Duncan, watching the traffic. Have you talked about the traffic yet?
We are going to talk about it because that is your big subject. One of the things that Steve loves talking about, besides cars, is also the traffic. So take a look at the screen now and you will see what we saw next to the Arc de Triomphe. Now look at this. This is what I call organised chaos. Now this is the large roundabout near the Arc de Triomphe. If you haven't been here, let's just say it is a very chaotic place that I don't know how all the cars and buses get around here without crashing into each other. But it's amazing.
It's utterly amazing. I was transfixed. I couldn't take my eye. We were just standing there watching. There are, you see, in the UK, the roads are very heavily regulated and organised. For whether they've ever tried having traffic lights on the roads around the Arc de Triomphe, I don't know, but it's just a case. But they don't have. There's no lane markings. There's no traffic lights. Well, there are traffic lights, pedestrian crossing points, sort of leading up to the roads, leading up to that sort of. I don't know whether you would call it a roundabout, but It's just you just watch cars they just shoot straight out. They're just diving in and out, weaving in and out of the traffic to get, because there must be at least sort of 8 or 10 exits around the Arc de Triomphe, because the whole road system sort of starts there, doesn't it, Mr. Duncan, in Paris? It's sort of, the roads seem to start at the Arc de Triomphe and radiate out from that point.
Yes.
And then, so everything, if you want to go anywhere, you have to go to the Arc de Triomphe and then take another road off somewhere else. And it's just every man and woman for himself.
Yes.
But we didn't see any accidents. We didn't hear of any accidents. There must be lots of accidents. There were certainly lots of cars with dents all down the side. Lots of horn bibbing.
Yes.
But people just seem to get through somehow.
Yes. It is amazing. And
truly amazing.
We stood there for about 10 minutes, and I kept trying to get Steve to leave, but he didn't want to. He said, I'm just fascinated by these cars. I can't believe that this is actual traffic that seems to have some sort of order. But there didn't seem to be any order. It seemed to be chaotic, and yet everyone seemed to know where to go.
Yes, I would guess you would really have to know where you were going. You couldn't follow a sat-nav if you were on the Arc de Triomphe. It would be too late. You'd have to know that you need to go round, you'd have to know where you're going to get off. At what point, to know what to do when you enter the roundabout, because otherwise you would be in the wrong place.
Yes.
So you must sort of know, right, I'm here, I want to go there.
Yes.
And then you just sort of weave in and out till you get there. So
That's it.
absolutely fascinating.
Yes. Well, that's what we saw people doing. They were literally pushing sideways. They were going side on into stationary traffic, which is something you cannot. Let me just stress this. You cannot do that in the UK without someone getting out of the car and probably dragging you out and beating you up.
That's what I noticed. There's a lot more tolerance on the roads. If you were to behave like that, because there's very fixed rules in the UK. You stop at traffic lights. You have to be in the right lane. And other cars, and if you're not in the right lane, nobody likes you trying to push in or do anything like that in the UK, and people get very angry and upset, and they'll blast their horn. When you're pipping your horn, we were told that when French people are bibbing their horns, it's not that they're so much that they're angry, that they're just doing it as it should be used for, which is a warning, and it's almost not friendly. But if you bib your horn in the UK, it's a real sign of anger. And you've got to watch out then, because somebody might chase you up the road, get out of the car. People get a lot angrier on the roads in the UK. You could never drive like this in the UK. There'd be stabbings and all sorts of things, and road rage. Look at that there. That's just unbelievable. That red van just cutting straight in there. You just couldn't do that in the UK, but it all works. It all seems to. Look, there's a motorcyclist weaving in and out.
Yes.
Probably on the continent that's quite common, but to us that's just chaos.
Yes.
To us in the UK that is just anathema. It just couldn't happen in the UK because all we ever do in the UK is put up traffic lights and lane markings.
Yes.
Wherever they can put up traffic lights in the UK, they will put them up.
Yes. Anyway, enough of UK roads. We're talking about the Paris roads.
Well, I'm making a comparison.
Oh no, no, that's a segue. So, Steve, I'm doing a segue there.
Oh right.
Okay. Not everything is an attack on you. Or almost not everything. So we had a super time. Would you like to have a look at the place that Steve mentioned earlier, Montmartre? Montmartre.
Which
Beautiful.
we're not pronouncing correctly, but
Well,
I
of
think
course
you have to roll your R's at the end.
I'm not rolling my R's. We will avoid that. So here we go. This is Montmartre, or otherwise known as the Mountain of the Martyrs. feels as if we're back there. I feel as if I'm in Paris right now. It's a Sunday, it's Le Fun Day. It's time to improve your English. Yes, it is English in your ear with Mr. Steve and Mr. Duncan. That's us, by the way. And also we have the live chat as well. Anything to report on the live chat, Steve?
Well, Luis Mendez says that if you sound your horn without danger, you're fined.
Wow.
So I take from that you're only supposed to sound your horn if, which is in the highway code here, you're only supposed to sound your horn if there is a danger. But of course, that's abused. And if you sound your horn, what Lewis is saying, say is a sign of anger, then you can be fined for that. I wonder if that's enforced. It's certainly not something that would happen in the UK. I don't think it's a law that you would be fined if you use your horn unless there's danger. But obviously they have put that into law in France, and I think that's a good thing. But I wonder if it's enforced. Certainly we saw very high security everywhere we went, didn't we, Mr. Duncan?
Oh, yes.
We saw policemen, all had guns. Machine guns, in fact.
Automatic weapons.
Automatic weapons. So we felt quite safe walking around Paris. In fact, literally everywhere we went, even outside the hotel.
Well, in the hotel.
In the hotel as well.
I went through the lobby of the hotel, and I was greeted by 3 huge police officers, and they all had large automatic machine guns in their hand, ready to spring into action. So I'm not sure if I felt comforted by it or a little uncomfortable. Talking of uncomfortable, by the way, Steve.
Go on.
Yesterday's flight back. Shall we talk about it?
Go on then.
Wow. Oh my God. We came back yesterday on the same day that the UK had one of the worst storms of the year so far. Winds, yes, the winds were around 80 miles an hour.
I don't think they were that much, were they?
Yes, they were.
Not when, well, it had been, but yes.
Yes, I'm just talking generally about the storm. The storm itself was about 80 miles an hour at its peak. Storm Hannah was the name, but of course as the day went on the storm got less and less, but it was still very windy, especially in the sky. And so as we were approaching Birmingham Airport, which is an airport that is well known for being very windy anyway, so there are a lot of crosswinds at Birmingham Airport. So as we came into land, we knew that we were going to have a very, very bumpy landing. In fact, I think it's the worst landing I've ever experienced in my life. It was absolutely horrendous. The plane was not just dropping, but it was turning like this. It was actually twisting from side to side, not just up and down, but twisting. So because we were at the back of the plane, the worst place to be, by the way, if you ever get on a plane, never sit at the back, because you can see everything that is happening to the plane as you look up towards the front of the plane. You can see everything the plane is doing when it's turning or twisting, going up or down. You can see it very clearly. Oh my God. I was absolutely petrified. I've never felt so scared in my life. And I wasn't even sitting next to you, was I?
No, we were across the aisle. You were across the aisle from me because the plane was full. It was a relatively small plane. It was only a 100-seater plane. So it was going to be, if there is a wind, you were going to feel it more in a smaller plane than you would in a larger plane. Wow. So yes, we'd known all week that possibly we could have a bit of a rough descent. In fact, it was a little bumpy on the way up, wasn't it?
Yes.
Out of Charles de Gaulle Airport.
Yes.
But as soon as the plane started descending through the clouds, it just got rougher and rougher and rougher. And I don't know whether it's my bad luck, but every time I fly into Birmingham, I always seem to have a bad flight because Birmingham, even if the winds aren't that high, you get you get a lot of wind in Birmingham Airport. So if there's a gale blowing, it's going to be twice as bad.
Yes. So this was an actual storm that was taking place. It was just coming towards the end of the storm, but it was still very windy, and we were landing in a place that is well known.
Not the worst descent and landing I've ever had at Birmingham Airport, but I would say it was the second worst.
Yes.
And judging by the number of people who were quite ill when we landed,
Yes.
then I think we can safely say it was a rough landing.
One woman was taken away in a wheelchair.
She was by me, and she was vomiting into her sick bag. She was absolutely distraught.
This.
With obviously the worry, and there were 3 or 4 other people around us who were ashen-faced. If you say you're ashen-faced, it means all the colour's gone from your face. You're the colour of ash, because they were so frightened by the experience. Because it's very rare that you get an experience quite as bad as that in an aeroplane. You might get the odd sort of jolt, but this was literally all the way down. And in fact, they never told us to take our seatbelts off at any point.
No.
And they told us not to move around in the aeroplane at all.
Yeah.
So when they say that, and we heard, what was the word we kept hearing?
Go on. Turbulence.
Turbulence, because they were announcing announcing all the announcement from the cockpit and from the flight attendants. We're in France first.
We're in France.
Because it was a French airline, Air France. So they made all the announcements in French first, but you could pick up, obviously there's a lot of similarities, which we're going to come on to later on in today's lesson, a lot of similarities between French and English words. And the one that is obviously virtually the same is turbulence. We kept hearing that, and we knew straight away that there were going to be problems.
Well, I think you might find the word turbulence actually comes from the French language.
It probably does.
It might be one on our list.
Like a lot of French words, as we will discover.
Later on, we will be doing that. We're going to look at some words that come from French, but also French words that are actually used in their original form in English. It's quite interesting, actually. Yes.
Very interesting.
Yes, very interesting. So yesterday's plane, it was landing, but it was going like that, but also like that as well. It was, in fact, I think when we landed, we were landing sideways.
Yes. I think that's what planes do. If there's a strong crosswind, then to compensate for that, the plane has to go into the wind a bit. So yes, it was a little frightening. I mean, I couldn't comfort you, could I, Mr. Duncan?
No,
I couldn't hold your hand.
But there was a lovely lady who sat next to me, and I said, I feel a little afraid by this. I'm a little scared of it. And I was talking to her about other things as well. And I said, oh dear, that's a bit bumpy. And she actually held my arm.
Yes, what a kind lady from South Africa, wasn't she?
Yes, well, she lives in the UK, but originally from South Africa. And she actually held my arm as we landed.
How about that? What kind people sometimes you sit by on a plane, the unexpected kindness from people that sometimes happens. You wouldn't have expected that. She could have been, you could have been sitting next to the person I sat next to, who was very unfriendly and didn't want to speak at all.
That is the problem.
You tend to get that, don't you, on an aeroplane or on a bus? You'll
or
get
anywhere.
Somebody. Yes, people will either want to talk to you or they'll want to completely ignore you. And I had the one that wanted to completely ignore me, and you had the friendly one, which was good job it wasn't the other way round. Otherwise, your flight could have been a lot more frightening. But What a lovely lady. We don't know her name, but we thank you very much if you're watching or if you ever watch this.
She did tell me her name, but I've completely forgotten it. In fact, I had almost forgotten everything about the trip. When I came back here yesterday, my brain was empty. I couldn't think of anything yesterday. I didn't do any editing last night. I couldn't face it because my mind was just completely... I was still in shock from this terrible landing that we'd endured. Landing at Birmingham Airport. Oh my goodness, it was terrible.
Leah Eville asked a very interesting question.
Okay.
Hello from Colombia. Did you run into a fan in Paris?
Well.
What? You've got a story, haven't you, Mr. Duncan? Or have you already told it?
No, I haven't told it yet. I haven't mentioned this yet. But strange thing happened at the hotel after I finished my big live stream. I went into the hotel and a woman came up behind me and she said, hello. She was saying, hey, hello, can I speak to you? And I said, oh, hello. Oh, what's going on? Oh, dear. Maybe I've done something wrong. And she said, do you have a YouTube channel? Do you make YouTube videos? And I said, yeah. She says, I was watching you this morning on your other live stream that you did. I was watching you and I just walked past you and you were actually doing a live stream at the time. And she actually looked at me twice. So as she went past, and I remember this happening because I actually mentioned it during the live stream. I actually talked about this person who walked by and they sort of went, they looked twice because they couldn't believe it. And I actually mentioned this during the live stream. And it was that woman. And she said, I have just been watching you. I can't believe it. So I was watching you on YouTube. And then later that day, I saw you actually doing a live stream, standing on the street corner. So, yes, that's amazing. So
that's a coincidence.
That's a big coincidence.
A big coincidence. I don't think she was so much a fan, but she had been watching you.
Yes.
Because she must have done a search for Paris and you must have come up and she watched you.
Yes.
But what a coincidence that she happened to be staying in the same hotel as we were and she went by at that exact time that you were doing your live stream.
Yes.
We should have got her details, but just a coincidence.
A coincidence.
Palmyra says, when I take a flight on Ryanair, I can understand nothing of what the flight attendants say because they speak so fast. Well, I know the reason for that, Palmyra. It's because they're probably Irish because it's an Irish company. That's where the headquarters are in Ireland. And Irish people have got a strong accent and they speak very, very quickly. So that's probably why you can't understand what they're saying.
Yes.
Because they're Irish and they speak very fast.
Yes.
Ryanair, by the way, I was looking up about airlines. It's come out in the top 10 of worst airlines to fly on.
Oh, I see.
For this year.
So not the list you want to belong in.
Well, it depends on what you think of what's worst. It depends on how you categorize things. You get what you pay for. So if you go on the cheapest possible flight you can,
yes,
which is Ryanair, that a budget airline, you can't expect the best service.
No.
And they did come out very highly in terms of their punctuality.
Yes.
So they're very good at getting you from place to place on time, but then the service in between is not so good. But then you're paying very low prices, so that's what you would expect.
That's it. And
it's
of course,
exactly what you would expect.
Yes, and of course there are other budget airlines that exist as well. Not only them.
Yes,
you've got EasyJet as well, another popular one. So you pay very little, but you don't get much either. It's what we call no frills. No frills. It means there is nothing special thrown in. There is nothing special. You won't be given champagne. You won't even be given water. You'll be given nothing.
Jamila says, did you buy any souvenirs while in Paris?
Only these.
that is a very interesting word for you to use, because that is a word derived from French.
Yes, it's true.
That is a French word. In fact, I've got it in my list of French words that are used in the everyday English language. So I will use that now. Souvenir, a piece of memorabilia. But in the UK, it's a French word. And in the UK, we use it to mean something physical to help you remember. So an object, like, for example, this beret that I'm wearing is a souvenir. It's a physical object used to help me remember the holiday that I went on. It means the same in French, but it also refers to memories as well. Memories in your head as opposed to physical objects. So there we go. That's the first French word that is used in English. It means the same thing, but in French it also means memories as opposed to physical objects.
Another word you can use is memento.
Memento, yes. I don't know if that's French.
I'm not sure if it is. I have a strange feeling it might be Italian.
It could well be, but we don't know that.
Well, you don't.
Yes. Now, I was frightened. I was a little scared on the flight. A few people have asked. But actually, strong winds aren't too much to worry about in an aeroplane. I've had a lot of flights where the winds have been bad, and I've been in much smaller planes than that.
Yes.
And had much worse experiences than in that plane.
Yes.
But normally you don't have to worry. I don't think that's something you need to worry about too much on a flight. It's engine problems. They're the things to worry about.
Yes.
Not wind, because the aeroplane can cope quite well with wind, windy conditions. It can compensate. It might be uncomfortable, but generally a plane is quite good. In fact, if you're flying a plane into wind, it gives you extra lift.
Okay.
So it actually can be an advantage.
Well, I suppose it's all right if you're going straight ahead.
Yes, that's right.
But it's when you take off through thick cloud, or you try to land and you have to go through thick cloud, and then you've got wind as well. So it's a combination of those things. That really was the worst landing I've ever experienced on a plane. I felt afterwards, actually traumatized by it.
He was very bad. He was quite bad. In fact, even this morning, viewers, he still felt a bit traumatized by the event. I felt sick for the rest of the evening because we were being shaken around quite a lot. I mean, this was quite a big plane, 100-seater plane. It's quite big. Well, I suppose it's small by most standards. We went out on an Airbus, which I think they hold about 250, 300 people, but the one on the way back was about half the size.
Yes, I think it's in the commercial airlines. I think it's at the smaller end. Yes,
it could have been worse. It could have been a turboprop plane with only about 25 people, 25 seats, which was a plane I've been on before. But that was horrendous. But we won't go into that.
No, we won't. So that was the flight. The flight out there was lovely. The other thing I noticed is when we got to Charles de Gaulle Airport is just how difficult it was. You had to do everything yourself, including get your boarding ticket and everything. It was all computerized and quite chaotic. And also, the new thing that they do now is everything is generated. All of your information is generated by your passports. So we've got new passports. So all of the information that is needed by everyone at the airport, including the security people, is now in your passport. So you have to go through this very strange machine, don't you, Steve?
Yes.
So it's like a case, a glass case, and you put your passport, you put it flat, and then a little sensor will read your passport, and then one of the doors will open, and then suddenly you're inside a square of glass. You're trapped in there, and then you have to use your face to identify yourself. And so a little camera will take a picture of you. And then you have a few moments where obviously the computer is deciding whether you can actually come into the country or not.
Whether your face matches the one on the passport.
Yes.
That's what it's checking.
So for a moment there, you are actually detained. That's what I said to you last night, wasn't it, Steve?
Yes, yes. It's like you've been detained until that computer decides that the picture it takes of your face inside that glass cage matches the one on the passport. I mean, obviously, it's very good for security.
Very good.
But you were stuck in there for some time.
Well,
because of course you had to take your hat off, your glasses. It couldn't read your face.
Yes, and
there
then
was a man shouting at you, wasn't there?
Well, that was leaving London.
That was leaving London, yeah.
And so they have the same thing there. But the thing is, I can't see anything when I take my glasses off. So I couldn't see if I was on the little screen in front of me. So I was just hoping that I was in the right place. But the scary thing is, for those few moments, you are actually detained.
Yes.
You are technically under arrest for those few moments until the other door opens and you leave the glass box. So yeah, it's good, it's efficient, but for the person standing there waiting for that other door to open, wow.
You feel a bit, if you're a person of an anxious nature, you would feel quite anxious at that point, because I haven't flown for about 8 years, neither of us have. And so all we're used to is you arrive at passport control, you hand your passport to a man behind a desk, and he looks at the passport photograph and he looks at you, and then he waves you through. But that job is now gone and has been replaced with a computer. So the computer decides whether it's your picture on the passport or not.
But the really scary thing is, for those few moments, you're trapped. You're actually trapped inside a small glass box.
Yes.
On your own.
I would imagine some people get quite panicky
in
there, and I bet they've had a few incidences where well, I mean, when we arrived, somebody was in handcuffs, weren't they? They were
Yes.
carting people up. When we arrived back in England,
Yes.
There was a man being handcuffed.
Yes, there was
in front of us.
There was a guy
guards came up.
Yes, there were police.
These police came up,
Yes.
handcuffed this bloke, dragged him off.
Yes, they were searching him. They were taking everything out of his pockets. So it looks as if he had no ticket. So he must have just arrived on another plane. I don't think he was on our plane. But
No.
It's very, very amazing. I've never seen that before. Although it did happen to me once when I was going back to China. The guy sitting next to me was taken off by the police. It's great. I was sitting there next to this guy, this young guy, and he didn't look very happy. And then a moment later, just before the plane left, before it took off, the police came and took him away. He was gone. But the good news was I had 2 seats. So I had an extra seat so I could lie down. So thank you to the police. Thank you to the anti-terrorism squad for letting me have a lie down on one of my long haul flights. So, Mr. Steve.
Yes.
Do you have another word to show us?
I have several. In fact, it's quite an interesting history as to why. I think I read that about a third of the words used in English are derived from French words. And the reason for this is that during the Norman conquests in 1066, where France successfully invaded Great Britain, or it wasn't called the UK then, Great Britain and Scotland. Maybe not, I don't know, but certainly Great Britain they took over. I don't know whether it was the whole of the UK area that we know today. But the French conquered us in 1066, and for 300 odd years, what happened was that the French language then was popularised and became something that was spoken by the elite English or British people would speak French, because the influence was, 300 years is a long time. So as a result of the Norman conquests, we have a lot of French words which have been either still used in their full form today, or have been slightly adapted and the spelling has been changed over the centuries since then. But that is the reason why so many French words are within the English language. Words such as, for example, well, I was going to say, people use French in the UK now if they want to feel a bit elitist, if you want to show off a bit and you want to seem like you're impressing people or you're cultured. So just as people did during the Norman Conquest era, we use French today to just make us sound more sophisticated, more elite, more as though we're in the upper classes of society. So it's a very snooty thing, very snobby thing to do. If you use French words today in England, people still think it's an elitist thing. So common words like information, attention, communication, connection, action, table, visible, comfortable, hospital, forest. They're all just a few words that are derived from the French language. And of course, there are lots of food-related ones because the French are famous for food. Menu is derived from a French word. Café. Chef is a French word, which actually means a boss. It's the head cook if you're in France. Picnic, omelette, of course. Restaurant is a French word. So lots of words in English derive from French. So that's fascinating. Do you want me to go into some of the words that are French words that are used in everyday language in England?
Right. Yes, why not? We have about 20 minutes, so plenty of time.
We'll do a few, then have a break. Here's a very common one, déjà vu. And I've put the accents in, or rather my computer put the accents in, some of them. So that's a French word, déjà vu. In England, when you use it in the UK, it's used to describe a feeling that you've been somewhere before, maybe in another life. So you go somewhere and you say, ooh, I'm getting déjà vu. And you think it's something it's a feeling. It's a common feeling that we have when we're saying that we think we've been here before. And you've never been there before. But sometimes your brain or your mind or something's going on and it gives you that feeling that you've been there before, maybe, and you might say in another life. It's a feeling of déjà vu. Sometimes when you meet someone, you might say, oh, have I met you before? And they say, no, you've never met me before. You might say, well, I'm getting a strong feeling of déjà vu, like I've seen you before, or I've been here before. What that is, we don't know, but that's what the feeling is. Now, in French, they do use that phrase to mean the same thing, but they would put a hyphen. So they've got two uses of the word déjà vu. So if you put a hyphen in between the déjà and the vu, it's the same meaning as in the UK. But if you spell it this way, then it means you've just seen somebody earlier that day or last week. So the word is used in everyday French to mean, oh, didn't I just see you before? I've just seen you before, meaning you actually have seen them before.
That's it.
But in English, it means you've seen them in another life or another world. So it's two different meanings and slightly different spellings in French compared to English.
Yes. As I understand, the translation is already seen.
Yes, that's correct. Already seen. So if you want to say in French that you've already seen somebody, haven't I already seen you today? You would put the word déjà vu would be in there because it means you've actually already seen them, as opposed to the feeling of déjà vu, which is something you can't really describe. But they do use it to mean the same thing, but they put a hyphen in between there. So that's déjà vu. Mirage.
Oh.
Mirage. It's a French word, just means an illusion. An illusion. So when we go to the desert, we've all seen those films of people wandering through the desert, gasping for water, and they think they see this lovely shimmering lake. And so they go towards it thinking it's water, but when they get there it isn't. It's just an illusion.
That's it. They think they see an oasis.
They see an oasis. It's just atmospheric conditions and the sun that creates this sort of illusion. So it's a natural phenomenon, really. But it means the same thing in French. Facade. Now, in French, the French words would put the accents and these little, like under this C, I don't know what you call that. If you write the word in English, quite often you would leave out the accent marks and things like that. But I'm spelling it the correct way. So facade has several meanings in English. It means the front or side of a building. Because in French, facade, it means face. But it doesn't mean a person's face, because they use the word visage for that. Mm-hmm. So it just means the facing on something, the front of something. So you could say that building has a lovely facade. So it means it's got a nice face to it, a nice frontage to it. It could also mean something fake. A person, if a person is fake or is not how they seem, you can suggest that they're putting on an act. You can say that they're putting on a facade. You might say, for example, he seems like a nice person, but don't trust him. It's all a facade. So if I was a horrible, nasty person and I started, I wanted to try and chat you up, I might use nice words and put on an act to try and draw you in. But in fact, I was a nasty person, and someone might say that's just a facade. So two different meanings there: the face of a building, the front of a building, or a person who's a bit fake, who's not how they seem. Potpourri or potpourri, you would say it in a posh way. That's got two meanings. Potpourri, it's actually, the literal translation isn't how it seems, but I won't go into that. But we use the word potpourri in English to mean a scented flower, a mixture of petals and dried flowers that are all different colours, that have an infusion of scent, and they're used to make a room smell nice. So you might have a bowl of potpourri, which is, you can buy these in bags from shops, and it's highly scented dried flowers and leaves and a mixture of all sorts of different things in different colours. It looks attractive in a room, and it gives off a nice fragrance. And French people typically used to have these little bouquets of flowers, a mixture of things inside a little cloth pouch, and they'd put them in their wardrobe to keep their clothes smelling fresh. So you could say, I bought this potpourri for my bathroom. So quite people have them in their bathrooms, in their living rooms, if they've got dogs, for example, and they want to make the room smell nice.
Yes. People used to wear potpourri on their body as well. They used to put them into their pockets because hygiene in the past wasn't that good.
No.
So what they would do, people would actually put potpourri, little perfumed leaves or little sachets or packets or maybe a little pouch of scented leaves, and they would put them in their clothing to hide the smell of their bodies.
That's it. So hygiene wasn't so good. You didn't wash your clothes as often as we do now. You might keep a pair of trousers on for months without washing it. But of course now we wear something once and then we shove it in the washing machine. But even now, we use highly scented water softeners, don't we? As the last addition in your washing machine, you will have a softener that's highly scented. So people are still conscious of having nicely smelling clothes, even now, even when they're washed very regularly. And we often comment that when people pass you sometimes, if you're out for a walk, I don't know if it's just here in the UK, but people in the UK are obsessed with smothering their clothes in highly scented softeners that go into the washing machine. And it's really, sometimes the smell of the clothes is so strong that it makes you sneeze. And I don't like it at all. So the potpourri is this mixture of dried flowers that's scented. But if you've got it, you can use the word potpourri to describe a collection, a diverse collection of items. So, for example, if you were to go and see a concert and the orchestra or the singer was playing all sorts of different styles, you might say that, oh, that was a real potpourri of musical styles. So it just means a mixture, a very different mixture of things.
It's interesting how they call it, how the P-O-T, pot, is actually pronounced po, because I think that also may be that refers to the old toilet, the potty that used to be put under the bed before toilets came along. So you can also call that a po.
Oh, right, okay.
Instead of pot. So I think that must also derive from the French language, like chamber. As I understand, chamber is another one.
Because I don't know that, Mr. Duncan.
Hmm.
Here's another one. Cul-de-sac.
Ah.
Cul-de-sac. And you're supposed to pronounce that cul-du-sac, not cul-de-sac. We often tend to pronounce it cul-de-sac in the UK, but the correct pronunciation in French would be cul-de-sac. So in English, this means it's a posh word in English to mean a dead-end road. So quite often in housing estates, there will be a road that doesn't go anywhere. It's got houses in it, but it's a dead-end road. So you'd have to turn around and come back the other way.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of saying dead-end road, which would be an informal way of saying it, in the UK, if you wanted to sound posh, you would say that you lived in a cul-de-sac. So it's a posh word of saying dead-end road. But in French, it's the complete opposite. If you use the word cul-de-sac in French to mean a dead-end road, that literally, that means that, I think cul means but in France, in French. So they would use the word impasse, would be a more formal way of using the word dead-end road. You wouldn't use cul-de-sac in France. It is used to mean a dead-end road, but it's a very coarse way of using the phrase. So it's a complete opposite. Cul-de-sac in English is a posh way of saying dead-end road, but in France it's not a posh way. It's a very informal way of using that phrase.
And literally, in its literal form, it means bottom of the bag.
That's it, exactly. But means bottom. Cul means butt, or bottom, or your butt.
Yes.
So it's a little crude in French. That word is crude, but in English it sounds, oh, I live in a cul-de-sac. You wouldn't say, oh, I live in a dead-end road.
No.
Is not posh.
You can often use dead end negatively. In fact, quite often you will use the word dead end. Dead end. It's a dead end street. It's a dead end town.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Dreadful.
So there's the word impasse, which I spoke about before. It's a posh word. We don't use impasse in the UK to mean a dead end road. We use it to mean it's a posh word for deadlock. So if you're in talks with, say, two governments, two world leaders are in talks together, and they can't get past a certain point in their discussion, they can't make any progress, and they stop the talks, you say there's been an impasse. So they can't get over something in their talks. But in French, it doesn't mean that. It means a dead-end road. But it's a deadlock. So the two leaders have reached an impasse. So you and I, Mr. Duncan, could be having an argument, and we can't resolve that argument. We can't end it. We could say that we've reached an impasse, and then we'd have to go away and have a think about it. So that's a French word used in, and this is quite often happens, the literal meaning, the way that the French use the word that we use in English is often different than the way the French would use it. Here's another one, matinee. Matinee. So it's in English, it's a French word, matinee, and there's the accent I've put above the first E. Now, you wouldn't always write that in English. You would normally leave it out, but that would be the correct way of writing it. It just means an afternoon performance in a theatre or in a cinema for a film. It just means an afternoon performance. Now, it can mean that in French, but they also use the word matinee, is normally used to mean the morning period. Anything up to sort of noon. But they do use the word matinee to mean a matinee performance in the theatre world, but usually French people use matinee to mean morning. So there we go, there's another big difference. So you've got to use it specifically, a matinee performance, and it means, well, we're doing a matinee performance now, are we not? Well, yeah. We're not. The thing is, we're not doing one. You would only say matinee performance if there was a performance that was going to also happen and be repeated in the evening. So they say there was more than one performance in that day. There could be one in the morning, or there could be one in the evening, and one in the afternoon. You would then say that's a matinee performance, the afternoon performance.
So if I was doing 3 live streams every day, I did one in the morning, one in the evening, and an afternoon one, I could call the afternoon one my matinee English.
Yes. In French, you also have a matinee idol, but that means something different. That means a sort of a very attractive male heartthrob actor, and you call them a matinee idol. It's sort of, but they're not. They're sort of romantic, aren't they? Sort of very romantic actors.
Very dashing.
Yes. Not somebody you describe as necessarily a very sexy actor. It's somebody who would be quite smart and very well behaved, but they would be seen as very handsome and very attractive. Well, Mr. Duncan, if we've done well today, as we quite often do, or you do, we might be asked to do another performance. So you would be asked to do an encore. So you shout encore when you want more from a performer. So a performer has finished his main act and you love him so much you might stand up, him or her, it doesn't have to be a man. You love them so much, it could be an opera singer, it might be the whole troupe in a play, for example, and you want them to perform more. It's usually a song, isn't it? And you shout them encore, encore, and it means you want them to perform again. That's the only time we use it in English, but in French it's a daily word. They use it in everyday language to just mean again or another.
I wonder if anyone will be shouting encore in around about 4 minutes when we go.
Right, oh blimey, yes, we're going to run over, aren't we? So yes, so encore in French is an everyday word meaning again, but we use it only for performers.
Oh.
Avant-garde literally means advance guard, or the first to do something. It's avant-garde means cutting edge, an artist usually, a performer who does something different, cutting edge, very different, innovative. Andy Warhol, you could say Andy Warhol was an avant-garde artist. But it can also mean anybody that's different. If you went to work, if I went to work in this beret, for example, somebody might say, "Oh, you're very avant-garde today." It just means I'm a bit different. But usually means somebody refers to an artist who is first in his field, who pushing the boundaries, doing something very different.
Yes, I don't think avant-garde would be the thing they would call you. Weird, odd, unusual.
How about risque?
Frank
They might
Spencer.
say I'm a bit risque.
Frank Spencer.
Risque, yes. Risque in English means to dress in a sexually aggressive way, actually. Risque. If a woman wears a short skirt, she might be described as risque. Or if a man wore a thong, you might say he was being very risque. It just means risk. It literally means risk in French. So if you do something risky, usually sexually provocative, in the way that you dress, you say you're very risque. Your performance, her performance was very risque. Madonna's performance was very risque.
Very, very current.
Exactly. Well, all right then. Ariana Grande, whatever her name is, was performed in a risque way. So she might be bending around all over the place, showing her breasts, etc.
Bending over, showing her breasts.
Yes, if you do a sexually charged performance, that gets people. I mean, these days that word isn't used very often because we're used to performers pushing the boundaries of sexuality. So it's it's not a word that's used very commonly these days.
Maybe Lady Gaga.
Yes, Lady Gaga. But then you would risque is a bit of an old-fashioned word because everybody's risque now. Fiancé with one E is a man. If you want to be really properly correct. Fiancé with two E's refers to a woman. So that's just someone you're going to marry. And in French, they would put two E's to mean female. And you can do that in English. Most people would just spell it with one E to mean a man or a woman.
So the person who is your intended is your fiancé.
Fiancé.
Or fiancée.
You see, again, that's a posh word. You could say it's just my intended. Or somebody I'm going to marry. If you wanted to sound posh in English, you would say my fiancé. Oh, please meet my fiancé. Or that would make you seem a bit more upmarket, a bit posher, a bit more sophisticated.
Yes.
RSVP. Everybody in English sees that on any invitation to a wedding or to any important event. You get an invitation to the post and they say RSVP. It literally is a stolen French phrase. Respondez s'il vous plaît. It just means respond if you please. In other words, tell me if you're coming or not. So if you see RSVP and an invitation, it means they want you to reply back to them and say either yes, I'm coming, or no, I'm not.
That's it. So they don't want you to just ignore it.
Exactly. They don't want you to. They want to know either way. Respondez s'il vous plaît.
You know what was funny during the week, Steve? We went to that beautiful Sacré-Cœur, which is a wonderful church at the top of the big hill in Paris. And inside the church, you are not allowed to say anything. You have to stay in complete and utter silence. But what I found interesting was that whenever someone whispered or made a slight sound, there was a guy there inside who would shout, "Silence, silence."
Yes.
Which I thought was strange because he was actually making a noise.
Yes, there were hundreds of people all walking around the Sacré-Cœur having a look. And this, of course, people can't resist talking. They're not supposed to, because you're supposed to respect the fact that it's a place of prayer where people are praying. And people, of course, are talking. And this man comes up and says, "Silence!" And we thought it was quite funny because he was saying silence. Why didn't he just have a sign saying silence?
He was the noisiest person there.
He could have just had a sign and pushed it in your face. But instead he shouted it out.
The person saying silence was actually the noisiest person in the whole place.
Hors d'oeuvre.
Ooh,
hors d'oeuvre.
Yes, please.
We had lots of those.
Please, hors d'oeuvres.
Hors d'oeuvres. To British people, the phrase means a posh meal out somewhere, lavish parties, cocktail parties. where you're sipping wine or cocktails before the meal, and a waiter comes around and hands you these little small bites to eat, which are designed to get your appetite going, and they call them hors d'oeuvres. You don't pronounce the H. You're supposed to say hors d'oeuvres. They're just little bites to eat to get your appetite going. They're served, and it's the similar thing in French, I believe, usually at a wedding or an expensive event. But if you go somewhere and they're serving hors d'oeuvres, you know you're in a posh. You're going to a posh, going for a posh night out.
I have some posh food here, Steve.
Do you?
We went to a beautiful cafe, didn't we? A restaurant called La Dorée.
La
Dorée, which is on the Champs-Élysées. And it was a beautiful place, but also it's famous for being the place where they make the double macaroons. And I have some here right now. I'm going to eat a macaroon. So here we go. For those who don't know what a macaroon is, I will show you. There you go. Look at that. Some delicious macaroons. They are very light biscuits with a little bit of cream in the middle. I'm going to eat one now.
Are they made? The outside is made from egg white, I think, isn't it?
Yes.
And then inside there's like a fondant filling.
Yes. The consistency is almost like meringue on the outside.
I think it is meringue. I think it's egg whites, and then inside you've got a fondant filling. And while you're eating that live, I can use the word à la carte. À la carte. So again, there's an accent over the A, which would be the correct way of spelling that French word. But in the UK, you could leave that accent out. It just means in English, in England, it means the menu where you can choose what you want to eat. So sometimes you go into a restaurant and there's a set menu. If Jeff's watching, I've got a use of the word set in, a set menu, which means a defined menu. So you can't choose what you're going to eat. Everyone is going to get the same starter, the same main course, the same sweet. But if you say, I want the a la carte menu, then you can choose from chicken, beef, whatever you want to have. And it's usually, of course, more expensive. So if you ask for the a la carte menu in a restaurant, again, it's saying you're a bit posh, you've got more money, you're higher up the social scale. So it really says that you're a bit of a posh person if you ask for the a la carte menu. And you normally only see that used in England in very posh restaurants or expensive restaurants. Sometimes not, but usually only in a posh restaurant. I don't know if it means the same in France. It might be. So we're still talking about. There are lots of words in French that are used in cooking. Here's another one: sauté. If you sauté something, it means you fry it in oil in a shallow pan. So you sautéed potatoes. So it's not the same as fried, where you would put the object that you want to fry into a big deep pan of oil. If you just lightly cook it in oil in a shallow frying pan, in a shallow pan, it means you saute something. And sautéed potatoes, it just means they get a bit crispy around the edges. You can saute lots of things, mushrooms or vegetables. It's commonly used for. Sauté. Again, if you saute your vegetables or your potatoes and serve them to somebody, you're being a bit posh. It's to most English people, it's the same as fried. But if you're being a little posh, a little elitist, you saute your potatoes. You don't fry them. And there we go. Oh, I've got one more here, Mr. Duncan. Déjà vu. Oh, déjà vu.
What does déjà vu mean?
I've got a feeling that I've already spoken about the word déjà vu. Well, I'm getting this funny déjà vu feeling, Mr. Duncan.
I'm also feeling the same thing at my left leg.
A use of the word déjà vu, but in fact it's not the correct English way of using it, because we are using it in the French word. I've already used the word déjà vu. We've been there before.
Already seen.
Already seen. Déjà vu. That's the correct French way of using that expression. So I'm all done.
Good.
Finiti. Oh, no, that's not right. Finito. I think that's Italian.
Yeah. I think in French... in French you say fin.
That's it.
Fin. These macaroons are absolutely delicious. We got these from a beautiful place we visited to eat, thanks to Mr. Steve's company. And also we had some free macaroons that didn't charge us anything. This is gorgeous. Jamelia says, what about mayonnaise as a word?
Mayonnaise, yes. That sounds French to me.
And also hollandaise sauce.
Yes. Well, we could be here all day talking about French-derived phrases.
Yes. Well, this is all food now. What about soufflé?
Soufflé, famous French dish.
Soufflé. Well, what about macaron or macaroon? I think that's French.
That's it. Macron, yes, and macaroon. They're very close. I don't know whether his fat. Well, he'd have to be from the. I don't know who invented the macaroon. Probably somebody from the Ladurée family or one of his employees or her employees. I don't know. But yes, it was a very posh restaurant. It was very French, but it was lovely. Something we found very interesting is that they like mashed potato in France.
Yes.
I don't know whether they call it mashed potato. To us, mashed potato is a dish eaten by, let's say, people with less money than average.
That is the worst thing I've ever heard you say.
Well, normally mashed potatoes is associated. It's a very cheap meal, isn't it?
Yes, but you do realise in French cuisine, potatoes are used quite a lot, including mashed potatoes. But they're heavily buttered. So
I'm just saying. But to us,
yes,
it's a very common, food. That if you were to serve, for example, if someone was to come to your house and you served them mashed potatoes, it would be seen as a very bad thing to do.
You mean like we did?
We did do that once.
We did do that. We invited some of our friends. One of our friends who is a conductor and also now a well-known musician and composer. Can you believe it? He actually composed an award-winning musical, and we invited him to our house and we gave him mashed potatoes and chili con carne, and we never saw them again.
And literally every time we had beef, which we never eat here, but is obviously a very popular. The beef was so delicious.
Yes.
But it was any meat that we had, chicken. It was always served with mashed potatoes.
Yes. Jamelia, wait there, Steve. I'm getting some information now that might be useful.
Okay.
And will prevent us from looking like idiots. Jamelia says purée de pommes de terre, which I saw on the menu.
That's it.
So yes, it's pureed potatoes, and it has also very creamy as well. It's quite. I think it has a lot of butter, but oh my goodness! And of course, I love mashed potatoes.
That's your favourite food.
That's my favourite.
Because you're common.
I could live. Yes, of course I'm common. Yeah, that's right, Steve.
I'm only joking.
I'm common. I know it.
But it did go very well with anything. But in England, mashed potatoes is seen as a sort of a low-grade food. But obviously in France, in the best restaurants, it's not.
So on our final night, we had the same meal, didn't we, Steve? We had beef bourguignon, which is beef cooked in red wine. And also on the side, we had some purée de pommes de terre, which is mashed potatoes.
And in fact, in the party that I was with, the work party that I was with, there were people from all different parts of the world, and a lot of them couldn't speak English. But when they were served this meal in this expensive restaurant, and 2 or 3 that we went to, And they were just laughing. They were saying, blah, 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 whatever their language, blah, 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 mashed potato. So they were just laughing because the last thing they expected to see in a French restaurant was mashed potato. So like us, I don't know why that. Presumably because potatoes grow very readily in the UK and we eat a lot of them. I don't know the history of that, but it was unexpected, and it was, but for you, a very pleasant surprise.
Steve doesn't know the history of potatoes.
Well, I know what I meant was I don't know why it's such seen as a low-grade food in the UK, but in France it's seen as more elevated. I don't know why that is.
I think there are a lot of Irish people that would disagree with that.
Well, I know the Irish would, but I'm talking about the French. But there you go. Yes, sweet tooth is very common in the UK. Yes, it is. And in French, they do like their sweets, but they tend to be not as they don't eat as much sugar as we do. But maybe that's not the same now. Oh, my favourite dish, which I'd never like in the UK, is the custard-based, what's it called? Creme brulee. I don't like it in the UK, but in France, it tasted absolutely delicious.
Creme brulee?
It's my favourite. Yes, but when you have creme brulee in the UK, it's just cheap custard. It's nothing like the creme brulee we had in France. So we've tasted the proper creme brulee, and I had a crepe while I was there. I had a lovely crepe.
I had a crepe this morning.
I'm sure you did, Mr. Duncan. But I had a crepe with a banana and chocolate sauce, and it was delicious. So it's basically a pancake, but they're called crepes in France, and very nice it was too. We could talk all the rest of the afternoon about our trip to France, but I'm sure we would bore everybody stupid.
I want to go back there and get some more macaroons.
Are they nice, Mr. Duncan? Because I haven't had one yet.
These are incredible.
Save one for me.
Oh.
Yours got a bit crushed in your suitcase.
Well, yes. Well, you've got some as well.
Yes, Mr. Bruno says, sorry for Mr. Steve, as Mr. Duncan is eating away all the macaroons.
There is another box of macaroons for Steve, so just, ignore him, even though I will probably eat those as well.
Matrix says, it's just food. There is no low-grade food. Well, it's just what I mean is the perception.
I agree.
In society about you wouldn't serve mashed potato to posh people.
This is because
the UK.
This is because Steve is posh, you see.
That's right. Different foods in different countries have different associations and different connotations. That's just the way it is.
I've got a chocolate macaroon here. I'm going to taste the chocolate macaroon. I have a feeling this chocolate macaroon is going to taste absolutely gorgeous.
Will you please save some for me, Mr. Duncan?
There's only one left.
Well, save me a piece. I want to taste it.
But you have a box of them as well. You have a...
but I've got them for my mother. I'm saving them for my mother. You're not eating all of them, are you? He's got such a sweet tooth. Anyway, I think it's time to go, Mr. Duncan. We haven't got any tea cakes today.
No.
We've got nothing. We're just going to have to eat. We're just going to have the cup of tea with nothing.
And the thing is, we haven't even found out why there were no dogs in Paris. We didn't see any dogs or cats or any wild animals.
Well,
very
we won't
strange.
see wild animals roaming down the Champs-Elysees.
Well, you know what I mean.
Mr. Duncan?
You know what I mean.
You mean pigs and cows?
Well,
we're not going to see those in any city.
Yes. Well, there are other wild animals as well besides dogs and cats.
There weren't many birds. There was really very little in the way of wild animals. You are right in that degree. We saw very few birds.
Lots of pigeons.
Yes, not even as many of those as you would expect. I mean, London's just covered in pigeons. There's more pigeons in London. Perhaps they control them.
There were lots of people. There were a lot of people selling souvenirs as well around the streets.
That's a French word, Mr. Duncan. Souvenir. Oh, I've already said that. There were lots of people selling souvenirs. That was a little. We didn't really, I know that people need to sell souvenirs and people need to earn a living, but it did detract away from the experience.
Some of the people selling the souvenirs were a little unsavoury.
Not sure what you're saying, Mr. Duncan. They're people trying to earn a living, but at the same time, some of them were a bit aggressive.
Some of them were very aggressive.
But you get this in any town, any city, everywhere we've ever been. You always get people aggressively trying to sell things to you.
You don't get it in much Wenlock.
Well, I mean in cities, Mr. Duncan.
You said towns.
In cities. Towns and cities around the world. Apparently, we've been advised to go to Lyon in France because the food is much cheaper and even better. Apparently, Lyon is the sort of food capital of France, so I was told. So we may visit there. Apparently, it's a lot quieter. But I've got a strong feeling we're going to be going back to Paris. Maybe when they've finished all the renovations. The only thing that we thought was a bit unusual was the amount of dust. It was very dusty. A lot of the walking areas around the sites, the tourist sites like the Arc de Triomphe, particularly the Eiffel Tower, and the long walk from the Place de la Concorde up to the Louvre, the walking area is covered in this sort of fine gravel, which when you walk on it generates a lot of dust in the air, which I thought was I'm sure there's a better solution to pedestrian areas. I mean, they're large, expansive areas, so I'm sure it's an inexpensive way of covering it, but at the same time it generates a lot of dust which gets into your eyes, and your shoes are absolutely filthy.
Yes.
After you've walked on it just for a few minutes.
I got my shoes out of the suitcase, and the first thing I noticed it was there was dust everywhere.
That I was very surprised about. When you're walking out and about in Paris around the tourist areas, I would suggest you do not wear your best shoes because they will be ruined and covered in this light sandy dust, which, if there's a wind, must be very bad.
Well, it was going in my eyes the other day when we were doing the live stream by the Eiffel Tower, and I couldn't see anything. I was blinded by all this dust.
And that's just people there wasn't even a strong wind. That's just people walking around.
Another thing to mention that we haven't mentioned today is that there is a lot of renovation and also a lot of building work going on around Paris. So many of the areas where the public normally wander and walk around are actually closed because there is a lot of restoration and also renovation taking place around Paris. So we were a little disappointed to find that there were some places we couldn't go round or get to around the Eiffel Tower. So it was all cordoned off. It was closed off because that they are actually doing a lot of renovation work around Paris on many buildings.
Yes, Jamila. I think in macaroons, I think there are almonds in there as well. I think that's the secret. I think there's almonds in there as well. My father used to like macaroons. It was one of his favourite sweets. And Jamila says also, British people serve mashed potatoes with peas. Yes, that's very common. And mashed potatoes as well. It's really something you give to children in the UK because it's easier for them to eat. But maybe that's why they give it to French people, so that you don't have to sit there chewing and looking unsophisticated. You can just put the mashed potatoes in your mouth and swallow it straight down, instead of having to chew. Maybe it's, mind you have to chew on the meat. So I may be wrong there. I'd like to know why mashed potato is seen as a sophisticated menu choice in France? I'd like someone to tell me that, because that was a surprise. That and the dust. Maybe the mashed potatoes are made from all the dust. Maybe they add a bit of the dust in there to bind up the potatoes.
Yes. Well, there is Steve, really trying to get his next visa. You know, when we leave Europe, Steve, when Brexit happens, we won't be able to just go to Paris. We will have to go through all sorts of different channels, and also we will have to get a visa. So that was the last time, that visit to Paris was the last time probably that we can easily get into France.
Jamila says, why don't you go on the Eurostar next time? Well, we won't do that because it would take a lot longer.
Also, it often breaks down.
It often breaks down, and if there's ever a strike by workers, they very often strike at the Eurostar.
I'm always worried as well. It might get a leak, and then the English Channel will flood into the Channel Tunnel. I don't like the sound of that.
Well, put it this way: flying from Birmingham, it's about an hour to drive to Birmingham Airport, and then you've got 2-hour wait. The flight's an hour, so that's 4 hours. You can be in Paris. If we were to go on Eurostar, it would take us 4 hours just to drive to the south coast of England before we even get on the train. Mind you, we could catch the train from Birmingham, couldn't we? And get on the it'd be a lot more complicated. It would take longer.
Just too many connections.
Lots of connections, and it would take too long. And somebody said to me, "Why don't you drive?" Well, that would take about 8 hours. So no, we're not going to do that.
I'm not sure if Steve would survive very long on the French roads.
No, exactly. I wouldn't.
I'm just trying to imagine Steve. Before we go, Steve, we have one little thing to show, and that's Mr. Steve showing off his French skills. So here is Steve, very quickly. It's only a very short clip. Here is Mr. Steve ordering his coffee in Paris.
Bonjour, deux crèmes. No, it's okay. He come to see you. Okay.
See?
I wasn't ordering the coffee there, Mr. Duncan.
Well, the coffee came. Your order arrived. So there he was. I love the way he nearly hits you with the tray. He nearly hits you across the head with the tray.
I only speak a little French, Mr. Duncan.
Yes.
Un peu.
Petite franglaise.
So I would like to learn French again, because it's a beautiful language.
It is very romantic, and of course, my distant family is French. So I am actually of French descendants. Did you know that? Well, you do now. That's why I'm wearing my beret. I might wear my beret every week because I like it very much.
Lewis says he recognises where we were, the Place du Tertre. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. It was right opposite a church, a nice church, and that place was recommended by our tour guide.
Yes, and we had a delicious cup of coffee. We sat there and we watched the world go by.
It was something else I shall remember as well is the lovely coffee, because we don't normally have coffee. We normally have like Americano style coffee in the UK, but I hadn't forgotten how nice it was to have a nice espresso, and they were absolutely delicious. Delicious, that's probably the wrong word. Very tasty.
Yes.
You could sort of have 6 of those all at once.
Very satisfying.
Yes. Are we done, Mr. Duncan?
I think that's almost it. I hope you've enjoyed today's live stream. I hope it wasn't too boring. We were talking a lot about our trip to France, but we had a lovely time in Paris. It was very nice, lots of things. I would give it, if I had to give it a score out of 10, I would say 8 out of 10. For the food, for the lovely warm greetings from the people living there, and also the fact that it's very easy to get around as well. We used the metro, didn't we? We used our little...
We did.
Look, I've got some of my little metro cards that I've kept as souvenirs from our 5 days in Paris. So I hope you've enjoyed everything you've seen today. We are back next week, aren't we, Steve?
We are.
Back at 2 p.m. UK time. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks, Steve, for your company as well today. It's been lovely having you here.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. And I shall go and make us a cup of tea.
Ooh.
And we will have something sweet with it, but it won't be our usual... What do we usually have, Mr. Duncan? I can't remember the name of them.
Well, sometimes we have tea cakes.
Tea cakes.
And sometimes we have hot cross buns.
Hot cross buns. My brain is tired, Mr. Duncan.
I can guarantee one thing. We are definitely not having any macaroons.
Well, I'm going to have whatever you've saved for me.
So just basically a box of crumbs.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye, everybody. See you next week.
And there he's gone. Mr. Steve has left the building. I think he's also annoyed because I've almost eaten all of the macaroons. We're going now. A quick last look at the live chat. Let's see who is on before we leave. Bye-bye from Massimo, Beatrice, Eric, also Lena, Bluebird, Massimo, Catherine. Thank you very much for your company today. I hope you've enjoyed this. It's been a little unusual, something slightly different for a Sunday afternoon. We were so excited to spend some time in Paris, and we are just as excited to show you the sights that we saw around the city. We will be back next week from 2 p.m. UK time. You are also more than welcome to make a donation. There it is now. You can see if you want to make a donation, there is the address going under the screen right now. This is Mr. Duncan in the birthplace of the English language, saying thanks for watching today. Thank you so much for your company. I am feeling slightly tired and worn out today after my very busy week walking around the dusty streets of Paris. And of course, you know what's coming next. Yes, you do. Until the next time we meet here on YouTube. You know what's coming next? I suppose I could say au revoir until next Sunday. Or I could say ta-ta for now.